All right, my beautiful people. So this week's lecture. We are on chapter 12. This is the place part of the 4 Ps that we have. And this is making access convenient and pleasant. That's where we're at in our lecture today. Okay, so in social marketing, the significance of location, which is place, cannot be overstated. And so the concept goes beyond just merely situating products in a store or a service in a building. In this context, what we're doing actually is looking at how accessible and convenient the desired behavior or service is for the target audience. So by strategically placing resources in areas that are part of people's regular routines, marketers can then encourage behavioral change with minimal distribution to the audience's day-to-day lives. And so this is a way to make sure, in our context, to make sure how accessible something actually is. So let's take a look at the example that we have. The example that we see on the screen is pet waste pickup. So consider a pet disposal, right? So in public parks, especially in those that attract high numbers of dog walkers, placing waste disposal stations along popular pathways is critical. It really helps people, while it's very tempting, right, to leave the dog's poop on the ground if you can't find a place to throw it, it becomes more convenient and people are more likely to engage in that behavior if you have trash cans that are there that are dedicated for this, right? It's not as, if it's something conveniently there, you're more inclined to do it. And so that is an example. So if the stations are located far away from walking paths, people might be less inclined to actually use them, especially because, well, dog poop, it is biodegradable, right? It's part of nature and it goes back to nature. So it's not like they're messing up the environment. They're leaving something that could be positive for the environment. So people would feel like it's okay to do this, right? But if these places are there and they're closer, then they're more likely to actually use them. Another powerful example is organ donations. So in a lot of places, the DMV gives people the opportunities to opt into owner donations, organ donations. So when you apply or renew your license, you could have it there and it's easy to, it's just a box that you check, okay? And that makes you more inclined to do it. So I have mine on mine, right? So I have my little driver license and on it, it has the little pink dot, the donor dot. And if I had to seek it out, I wouldn't have done that. Does that make sense? And so these are things that if you want people to opt into these behaviors, it may be placing them where it is convenient would be a good thing. Make sense? Okay, so that is talking about placement. Placement in terms of behavior. So again, this is the third P in our 4P series. And this is where and how the target audience can access these products and services. Here, we're talking about physical and situational factors that can influence the adoption of the behavior. And so, for example, the goal is not simply to distribute information, but to position opportunities for action where they are convenient and accessible to the target market. So place here is also talking about a distribution channel for behavior change itself. So if you look at public health campaign and things that are reducing or aimed at reducing disease transmissions, by encouraging hand hygiene, for example, so having hand sanitizers in different places, easy access to them makes people more likely to use them. So things like airports, shopping malls, public transportation hubs. Maybe you walk into the train station and there is a hand sanitizer there. That limits the amount of bacteria that is being spread all throughout. So that would be a placement or distribution of these things. So here, again, we're talking about the things that are logistical, so things that are in places, and things that are physiological or physical that are preventing people from taking on that behavioral change, or psychological that is preventing people from taking on the behavioral change. Okay, so this is a 14-part series on what we are doing to develop a place strategy. So hang in there, okay? First thing first is objective of place strategy and benefit of place strategy. So when you're developing a place strategy, the primary objective that you have is to minimize the physical and mental effort that is required for the target audience to engage in that behavior. So as much as you can actually lower it down or limit that effort that people have to do. People are lazy, okay? The majority of people just don't want to do certain things. It's inconvenient. So your entire job revolves around making it what? Convenient. Cool? Make it as convenient as possible so people do not have any barriers. All right, saying people are lazy is a bit of a harsher way of saying it, but people have certain things that prevent them from reaching their goals. Okay? And it could be little things. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I trip over the details. Sometimes I create wholehearted content calendars that are good for 2 months. And the hardest part of all of it was not the designing, was not the content creation, was nothing but actually going on a posting platform and posting it and scheduling it. Okay? So that is something that making it convenient would make it easier for access as well. Okay? Cool? Yes? All right, I see some heads nodding. Fantastic. So one of the key benefits of a well-crafted place strategy is the potential to enhance participation rates significantly. So for example, when we're talking about health initiatives like smoking cessations or vaccination drives, locating support resources or clinics in places like shopping centers, workplaces, and public transportation hubs can encourage higher participation. So when people encourage these services in spaces they already visit, they are more likely to actually take advantage of them rather than going to a clinic and getting vaccinated there. Okay? Another benefit is actually reinforcement of behavior through natural or environmental cues. So by strategically situating resources, social marketers, what they do is they nudge the individual towards that desired behavior. Here's an example. Placing nutritional information at point of food selection, like cafeterias or category or grocery store aisles, reminds people to make healthier choices at the moment of decision making. I know some places that are smaller restaurants don't have nutritional facts on it, but if you walk into a restaurant and it has nutritional facts like the calorie count, you may think you're eating a salad, but you look at it and it's 700 calories. And you're like, oh, that's actually the majority of my day. Half of my day's calories. Does that make sense? So you look at it and you're able to say, oh, actually, I'm going to go with this sandwich that seems to have more protein and a little bit less calories, even though it has more carbs. Make sense? So when you present that stuff there in the natural environment or in environmental cues, you're better able to help people make better decisions. Okay? So this is all about placement. So it's not just about accessibility, but placement is also about something that is more appealing. Again, I will give you an example that I've used before. I told you guys about the social dating project that I've been working on, and I was doing a lot of research last time we spoke about it. Now that we're in this place of implementing this behavioral change that we're trying to get people to do, there is a tremendous difference between people's desire to attend these events before we branded it and made it look appealing, even though it was placed in the same places, And then after we branded it and made it look more appealing. We changed the name to something that is less triggering. We placed it in the same places as before, but when people saw something that is well branded and well put together, there was a bigger desire to be a part of it. Does that make sense? Or if not a bigger desire, then a more enthusiastic desire to partake in this event without feeling pressure. Cool? So this is where placement comes into play. I can place a trash can over here, but that may not help anything if it blends into the wall. Yeah? Okay. All right. Step 2, when you're looking at strategies for enhancing accessibility, to bring the location of resources closer to the target audience is probably one of the best things that you can do. When people have to travel a significant distance, you guys, they just don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. It takes additional effort. It takes a heavier burden on people. Think about it yourself as well. So you want to make sure that you are reducing what is called a travel burden and increasing the chances of engagement. So for example, mobile clinics, or they're called services on wheels, are a popular way to bring health resources closer to underserved communities where it's dental care, vaccination, or health screening is harder to access, and it eliminates the barrier of distance. So you got to think about it this way. What do you think are the hardest problems that people in underserved communities face when it comes to healthcare or going to the clinic? What do you guys have? Or what are some of the problems that you foresee? Yeah. The wait, what else? Getting there. Anything else? What are you guys thinking? I'm thinking maybe a stigma of walking in, maybe a stigma of this preconceived knowledge of this is going to cost me too much, and they're going to reject me, and they're going to tell me my insurance doesn't cover it, because there's a series of rejections that have happened over and over and over again for that person. So they would rather feel the pain than feel the emotional pain that is associated with it. So as a marketer, as a social marketer, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at what is preventing people from actually going to these places. And part of the solution is bringing the place to them. It's saying, I know you can't come to me today because you have all these problems. So let me come to you so that I can make you feel like you're part of my community. Okay? Make sense? And so this is where placement changes everything. Because a lot of the people in the underserved community are scared to go, genuinely believe that they don't have money to do it, and they may not have money to do it, but they don't know that there are resources that are available. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, cool. So bring the location closer to wherever they are. Another advantage, you guys, of bringing that location closer is the ability to engage with people in the setting where they are most comfortable. Behavioral change is not comfortable. It generally is not, okay? This is why you have people who fall into the same patterns over and over and over again. This is why you have people that are making the same bad choice again and again and again and again. Because change is not comfortable. So if we can break that barrier and make the services available at a local community level, maybe at a local community center, maybe at the workplace, even popular commercial areas, would help, like maybe at the mall, right? Maybe offering, again, we talked about vaccination, maybe offering a vaccine at the mall. So people wouldn't normally go, but it's there. Or a blood drive at the mall. You guys have seen the blood drives here at the school. Sometimes you're more inclined to go if they're here rather if they're somewhere. Does that make sense? Yeah, because they brought it to you. So unless you are an active donor and you're on the point every 3 months, you probably don't go to their center. You wait for them to you. Because being stuck by a needle is not everyone's favorite pastime activity. All right, part 3. You are looking at extending the hours of operation for services that promote beneficial behaviors. So limited hours can be a significant barrier to success, particularly for people who have a rigid life schedule, family obligations, or other time constraints. So a lot of people think, oh, I can't go to this place because I don't have time for it, or they close before I get there. And it's a consistent thing, and that stops people from actually doing that. You have, imagine if suicide hotlines were just open from 8 to 5. Is that beneficial to anybody? No. Because most suicidal thoughts aren't happening at in work hour and take a lunch break from 1. Yeah? So this is where extended hours becomes something that is really good and really important. Vote by mail is really good, right? This is a good example. How many of you guys voted this election? Okay, we have quite a few. Everyone else? Not gonna judge, just kidding. So a lot of you guys voted. How many voters by mail? Okay, we got quite a few voters by mail. I signed my ballots at home and I went and dropped it off as well. And part of the convenience of that is that you wouldn't have voted. You may not have voted if you had to wait, right? If you had to wait in that long line, you may have been like, okay, well, California is decided for already, so doesn't really matter, right? But of course, we're not just voting on the president, we're voting on propositions, we're voting on things that affect the law, we're voting on things that actually matter in our day-to-day lives. So the government wants you to vote, they want to hear your voice, and so they made it convenient so that 2-3 months before you got your ballot in the mail, you got a chance to think about it. They sent you pamphlets 3-4 times, maybe from August to November, where you got a chance to study the laws, you got a chance to fill out the application, the ballots before, maybe make corrections, cross people out, write notes about them, so that when your ballots came in, you're ready to go. And that made it a lot more convenient. So the hours had changed, right? You're not just limited to the day of before 8 p.m. And that made the behavioral change possible. Cool. Number 4 is being present at the point of decision making is a powerful way to influence behavior. So this strategy involves placing resources or opportunities for the desired behavior at the moment where people are likely to make related choices. And so by positioning these resources at the critical junctures, social marketers can then guide individuals toward positive behaviors at the time, at the exact moment when they are more likely to receive it, okay? This, again, the whole menu thing, you're more likely to choose a healthier option if you care about calories and you see the calories right in front of you, okay? Cool. If, how many people think a latte is relatively a healthy drink? Okay, what does it have? What should it have generally? Coffee, milk, and sugar. Okay. But then you go, which then gives you maybe 150 calories. If it's a regular latte. Okay, regular, nothing basic, nothing's going on. But then you go to coffee shop and you see that, oh wow, this latte is actually 500 calories. For the love of God, what's in this thing? And so you look at it and you're like, okay, maybe I shouldn't order this one. Maybe I should order something else. Make sense? Okay. And so that is the present at the point of decision making. So a compelling example of the strategy is providing ecstasy pill testing kits at nightclubs and festivals. So individuals who use recreational drugs are often at high risk of consuming dangerous or adulterated substance. And the decision to test a pill before something happens or before you take it on the spot is a really good way of checking, is this something really bad? Is it something that I'm not used to? And this is how you make a healthier, safer choice. If you've seen those, I don't know why they're not as popular, but they used to have nail polishes that if you dip your finger in it, like into the drink, you can find out if it was drugged or not. And so that's something that a lot of women were able to use to save their lives. Make sense? Okay. So those are things that are present as the decision. And so being present at the moment or the decision-making point makes it easier for you to make the right choice without needing additional planning or forethought. And so it makes it easier for that transition. All right, strategy number 5. Making a location more appealing is essential strategy for social marketers who want to encourage positive behavioral change by enhancing attractiveness and convenience of specific sites. So this strategy is particularly effective when trying to promote behaviors that require a shift in lifestyle. So things like exercising or using public infrastructure. And by beautifying and modernizing the location, we can reduce resistance and make the site a desirable place for people to spend time, aligning with it the behavioral goals for the campaign. So here's the deal. People like pretty things. People like pretty places because there's a psychological factor as well. There's a calming factor about things that are nicely and neatly placed. So changing the way a location is placed, and again, this is, we're talking the example I gave you guys earlier, maybe a simple shift in how the flyer looked the first time and how the flyer looked the second time makes people more excited to go. Okay. Part of the event that we're doing this time is we're bringing this is a small church that has a big backyard, and that's where we're hosting the event. But part of how we're changing the entire dynamic is that we're bringing an entire pop-up mobile entertainment company to put on this event. Okay, so by just saying that, you take something that would be not as exciting for people to come and make it a little bit more appealing so that people can actually join. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So this is what we're talking about here. An example would be bicycle path and lane in Los Angeles. So as you guys know, LA is a very car dominant city. And so biking is not as prominent. And so let's say you want to advocate for it. You want to create well-maintained, visually appealing, and safe bike lanes that the city reduces the physical and psychological barriers associated with cycling. Okay. Has anyone done this? Going to a shopping center and parking in front of the store and then getting in your car and moving it to the next store in the same shopping center? Right? Very California thing to do. It's a 5-minute walk. Nah, I'll get in my car and I'll go. Why is that? Well, because Californians are, right? Let's say you have 2 shopping centers right across each other. You probably move your car from one place to another. Whereas in other places, in European cities, in New York, people rarely use their cars. And so part of that is the psychology or the barriers that are there in our minds that we don't use public transportation. We don't walk. It's not very safe. All these kind of things or all these kind of psychological barriers that force you to do that. But if we make the place a little bit better, if we make it safer, if we make it more appealing, people are more likely to use it. Make sense? Cool. So instead of getting in your car and moving, you find that the path is actually pretty nice. Hey, let me walk across the street to that other shopping center so that I don't have to get into my car. Yeah, cool. Having Wi-Fi on the train, for example, is a good way of getting people to use it. Instead of driving an hour and a half to get to the university, for example, you can get on the train and use the Wi-Fi. Spend that hour and a half working, spend that hour and a half relaxing rather than driving. So if that has the accessibility or the ability to actually get work done for those hour and a half here and an hour and a half back, that gives you 3 hours of work. All right, number 6 is overcoming psychological barriers. And this is more beneficial or making beneficial behaviors more accessible. Psychological barriers, they can prevent people from engaging in certain behavior, even if they're inclined to do so. So these barriers include things like fear, anxiety, lack of trust, or simply mental discomfort associated with an unfamiliar process. Sometimes, let's say you stress, okay? And you're in a situation, you've been doing really well, and you've been working on your anxieties, you've been managing all that stuff, and then something happens. The easiest thing that you have, because you've trained yourself to do this over the years, is go back to stress eating, right? But you don't want to do that. And so that is a psychological barrier that you have for continuing the behavioral change. So you've got to find what is the actual trigger and how do I stop that? And so things like fear, anxiety, lack of trust, mental discomfort, these are all things that can prevent you psychologically from using that. So what you can do as a social marketer is use play strategies to help people feel more comfortable and confident by creating environments that reduce these barriers and make the behavior feel more approachable. So an example of this strategy is the concept of pets on the net. And this is where shelters and animal rescue organizations use platforms to help people find adoptable pets. So for people visiting, for some people, visiting a shelter can be emotionally challenging and or intimidating. And they may worry about the sadness of seeing abandoned animals or feel uncertain about adoption process, but by showcasing these animals online, it becomes easier for people to adopt them without the emotional trauma that they go through when they're going through a shelter, right? You're just seeing the happy dog. You're seeing the dog not alone. You're not seeing it in a cage. You're seeing it in a picture that makes it feel lively, that makes it more relatable to you and how that dog would feel in your own. Make sense? Cool. So those are psychological barriers. Telehealth is another example. Everyone knows what telehealth is? Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay. I thought you were asking a question. Yeah, so everyone knows what telehealth is for the most part? Yes? Okay. So essentially, it's you having a Zoom call with your doctor. There are certain things that you don't have to go through the doctors for, maybe your lab results, maybe things of that nature. Maybe a follow-up on something where you don't actually have to be in the office and they can just see you online. That would be telehealth. Telehealth is an example where place strategy helps overcome psychological barriers. So a lot of people feel anxious about visiting doctor's office, especially when it comes to mental health services. Some people don't want others to see them walking into a mental health office. And so it's easier for them in the privacy of their home to access that care. So by creating a space that is virtual, private, and convenient, telehealth makes it easier for individuals to seek the help they need without facing any psychological discomfort that might accompany a visit to the doctor. Number 7. So in many cases, people may face choices between engaging in beneficial behavior and opting for a less beneficial alternative. Social marketers can make that desired behavior more appealing by ensuring it is more accessible than the competing option. Think about it this way. You open the fridge and there is a cake that is there. You love sweets. there's also a, somewhere in the cupboard, there's something that is really healthy for you and protein filled, but it's not as accessible, right? So you open your fridge, the first thing you see is the cake. What do? You eat the cake, okay? But if I can replace that with something else. So instead of having chocolate all over the house, maybe replacing that with dates or figs, something that still gives you that sugar that you want, but a lot healthier. And making that more accessible allows you to make that choice over the other choice. And then over time, when you build that habit, you then naturally gravitate towards something that is like that. And even if you're trying to cut off sugars in general, then you would have already dealt with the chocolate stuff. Now what you're dealing with is reducing dates to maybe apples and going that way. Okay, cool. So that would be more accessible competition. If all you see in the fridge or all you see in the house are carbs, pastas and bread, when you open the fridge and you're really hungry, or when you get home from work or school and you're really, really hungry, what you're going to do is pull that bread. But if what you see is a can of garbanzo beans or some nuts or whatever the case is, that's what you're going to eat because of accessibility. Okay? So for example, a school lunch program that wants to encourage healthy eating might design lunch lines to make healthy options more accessible. So fruit and vegetables are positioned at the front of the line. Students are more likely to select them. Whereas if unhealthy snacks are hidden behind healthier choices, the temptation to choose the less nutrition option decreases. So the rearrangement doesn't eliminate the choice, it just makes it less likely to occur because it's less convenient and it's less accessible. Okay? Number 8, another way to reinforce beneficial behavior is to make the competing less desirable behavior harder or less pleasant to engage in. This strategy doesn't directly restrict the competing option, but instead introduces a subtle barrier that discourages it. So by adding friction to the alternative behavior, you as a social marketer can increase the likelihood that individuals will choose the more beneficial option. And what this approach requires is a balanced way to avoid creating resentment or backlash because there's no access to that resource. So for example, or a well-known example that we can see is the 25-foot rule for tobacco use. When smoking is prohibited within 25 feet of a building's entrance, exits, and window. So what does that mean? It means that the smoker will have to get out of the building, walk for 25 feet so that they can smoke, and then walk that 25 feet back to go into that building once again. It doesn't eliminate their behavior, right? It doesn't say you cannot smoke. It just says you have to walk a little bit further, which that person may or may not be inclined. So it's slightly more inconvenient, and that discourages the behavior in public spaces. Number 9 that we have is positioning the desired behavior or service in places where the target audience shop or spend significant times can be a very effective way of bringing them into that behavior. And this strategy leverages the audience's existing routines and places the desired behavior within the context of their regular shopping or lifestyle habits. And so by bringing in beneficial resources into locations when people are already present and potentially receive potentially there, what you're doing is you're creating an opportunity for engagement without requiring someone to go out of their way to reach whatever your behavior, again, desired behavioral change is. Okay. Mammograms at the mall is an example. So a lot of women would want to avoid getting a mammogram, but if they're And we know that malls have a lot of women that that go to them a lot more than men, or a lot more women go shopping, right? And so being there at the mall might be a great way for women to say, okay, well, I'll stop my shopping for 10 minutes to see if I'm okay and if I'm healthy. Whereas because there's no pain in it, generally, people are less, or women are less likely to go to the doctor to get a mammogram because they push it off because of work, because of commitment, because going to the doctor's office means I have to wait 2 hours to be seen, and it's a whole day ordeal. Make sense? Okay. So bringing it in to where the audience is a great place, is a great way to place your behavioral change campaign. Number 10, we're talking about positioning resources and opportunities where the priority audience already spends their time and is a highly effective strategy in social marketing. And so this approach allows social marketers to reach the audience comfortably, but in familiar settings where they are already inclined to spend their time. So for example, if you are looking at HIV testing, placing them in gay bathhouses. I don't know what gay bathhouses are, but I guess it's a place. And so these strategies recognize that there are spaces of individuals where the LGBTQ plus community may congregate and where at-risk population might be reached more effectively. Because they're already there, you're able to reach them. Okay, cool. So if you are looking for people to sign up for free testing, you go to where they're. You understand who your audience is, and
City Studio again, at Cal State LA.
I'm sure your directions.
I figured you're already here and you don't need directions to get here. Getting to bringing that service to your audience again, wherever they hang out, that's where that's what makes placements a lot easier. Okay. So if you want kids to do certain things, maybe being there at the schoolyard might be a good idea. I don't know if you guys ever did this when you were in elementary school where they would test your hearing. Yeah, well, they brought them to the kids. They didn't take the kids there. You'd have these vans that would show up and they would test your hearing and I think your vision, or something else. And it was just one by one. You go on the bus, you test your hearing, and you get out. Why? Because that's one way of ensuring that all the kids in the school were able to do this. Rather than saying, okay, well, each kid has, your parents have to take you there to get that tested. So a lot of people, that moves the barrier from the responsibility of the parents to the parents signing off on it, to having this be done that. So they brought it to where the audience came. Cool. All right, number 11, you're using or utilizing existing distribution channels to promote your behavior change can be cost-effective and efficient approach in social marketing. So this strategy leverages the infrastructure and reputation and reach of established channel to distribute resources and collect products. So working with pre-existing networks also allows social marketers to connect with an audience in places they already trust and frequent. I'll give you a live example of what we're doing right now with the dating project that we're doing. We've connected with, because this project is geared towards Arab Christians, which is a minority within a minority already, we had to find churches that are Arab churches or that are predominantly have an Arab audience to connect with them so that this became our distribution channel to connect with these people. The other thing that we did is we found organizations from Christian towns in the Middle East that are here, that have a representation here. And those were the people that we told, and they did the distribution for us. Does that make sense? So then you find existing distribution channels and you go through them in order to invite people into that behavior change that you have, because they already trust these organizations and you don't have to work from the ground up to be trusted. Number 12 is social franchising applies the principle of commercial franchising to achieve social objectives. So you create a framework of standardized services or products with consistent quality and reliability. And so this strategy enables social marketers to scale successful programs by replicating them in new locations under a consistent brand and operational model. Again, back to our example, one thing that we're doing, you start in Southern California, you collect your data, this becomes your playground. You make sure that everything you have is recorded and consistent and everything is there. And you take that model and you replicate it in New York, or you replicate it in Florida or wherever. Make sense? Okay, so you apply what you would apply for franchising, for documentations, for things like that, and you use it for social and behavioral change programs. So the concept of social franchising first gained traction with healthcare initiatives that are aimed to extend essential services to rural economically disadvantaged communities. And then you have the International Center for Social Franchising, also known as Spring Impact, has been instrumental in promoting this model across various sectors, providing experts to organizations looking to replicate their successful program on a larger scale. So social franchising enables organizations to expand their reach without needing to directly manage each individual location. All right, so there is something that is out there that really helps you do that. So this is the Spring Impact, and these are the resources, the toolkits that they have, and things that you may be able to find out or use in order for you to replicate your model and scale it all throughout. Cool? Yeah? Questions so far? How are we doing? All right, so now we are at 13, and here we have distribution channels are critical components in any place strategy in social marketing, and they determine how and where the target audience will access service and product. So an effective management of these channels involves choosing the right level of distribution to maximize reach and impact while maintaining control over quality and accessibility. So in social marketing, different levels of different distribution can be utilized on the target audience and resources available. The simplest form of distribution is the zero level channel, where product and services is provided directly from the organization to the consumer. And the one level channel introduces intermediaries, so such as community organization, local centers to distribute services and resources to these people. So an example of that would be in the terms of what we're doing would be social media marketing, right? Placing that flyer or that link on social media directly to the people, or going through churches who have youth groups and you distribute it through their youth. Make sense? Awesome. And then the last one that we have for this one is direct and single level channels. So social marketing distribution can involve in multi-level channels, such as 2 levels or 3-level channels. And these channels can add further add a layer of intermediaries between the organization and the end users, typically to reach a larger or more dispersed audience. So a multi-channel a multi-level channel requires careful management to ensure that each intermediary understands and supports the social marketing goal, as each layer introducing additional complexities of training, quality control, and communication. And the last thing we're going to talk about today is the ethical consideration when selecting a distribution channel. You are looking for fair, inclusive, and responsible campaigns. So one significant ethical issue is equity, making sure that all segments of your target audience, especially marginalized groups, have equal access to promoted behavior or service. So without careful planning, this is not possible. You have to have certain distribution channels that may be unintentionally excluding some groups or creating disparities that counteract the social good that you're trying to do. So you want to make sure that there is access for people, all segments of your target audience. All right, my friends, that is it for this lecture.